Hello, hello, YouTube. I'm back at it again with the Samuel Vimes City Watch build. This time I've moved around a handful of stats, a little less strength, a little more faith, made him a little more tanky, because he's got them defensive buffs. Faith has all that utility, so it seems that the more that certain builds converge towards using faith in some capacity, the better they do. I also wanted this to be a sword and board video, so I'm showing off the kit in front of the class here, and it's essentially the same except for I added a line of straight swords as well as a line of shields with varying purposes. Lordsworn sword because it's a good simple sword with an extra crit rating, looks nice. Personally, I can't stand the noble slender straight sword. I don't like the way it looks. It looks like something you buy in your attempt to be a mall ninja. It looks bad, it's purely ornamental, do not like, don't use. It's useful though, it's like the longest straight sword or some such, so it has a place for those dex builds. But let's get to it. I wanted to show off a little bit about how Sword and Board feels, and to be fair, Sword and Board is rough. It is a hard way to play. It isn't nearly as strong an option as it was all the way back in Dark Souls 3. It suffered a bit. Is it still useful? Yes. It's not completely neutered. You just have to have a bigger brain than your opponent, and you have to have a bigger brain more times than they have, you know, successful hits, or so it feels. In a one-on-one situation, Sword and Board could do quite well. I need to find situations in which I could block. I should probably practice perfect parrying, but with internet getting added to the mix, that doesn't feel like something you could practice reasonably well. However, Sword and Board, even if you're just using the shield for parries, or to, you know, block small hits from a dagger, you know, really pacing yourself, it still has usefulness. Paired straight swords will almost always be a better combination. However, when you're using one sword, you make use of that thrust. Those R2s will be a lifesaver. They break poise even on bigger enemies, and there's that slick parry, and that's the reason you like the Sword and Board. More honorable than shield pokes could ever be, and you get that good crit on there. How could you not want that? But I like the Sword and Board. It's a romantic option. Historically, not the main choice for a lot of armies and weaponries across the world. However, swords, wonderful sidearm, if a little expensive to make compared to a spear. They look nice. How could you not like the sword? But I have learned from my last PvP video I attempted to make. That one was supposed to be all about sniping, and it sort of fell apart, so I decided in this video I would intermingle invasions along with duels, specifically, so that I get a good opportunity to show off Sword and Board regularly in where it shines. It's just hard to use it in a situation where there's more than one person going against you. I can understand why a lot of people, when they use a caster build who has to have low physical stats, where they have a straight sword, because the straight sword is still a good option. You just can't get up in people's face. It's hard to make good trades or to have a get off of me option on a straight sword. But if you're a caster as well, the casting implement can be your means of having a get off of me button as well as a deal mass damage button, and you can chip away at people and get last hits with a straight sword fairly well. Not so good at chasing people down, but still fun. And a handful of times this video I tried to stretch and use the Stormhawk axe as an actual weapon. And let me tell you, even though I'm getting a lot of hits here on screen, I almost never score that many hits with the darn thing. Unless I'm using its Ash of War in a very specific time and place. This little bit of the invasion right here is actually a great example of when your weapon feels like it's falling short, whether due to internet or just its inherent attack pattern kit. It just feels like it's not the one for the job. I felt like the greatsword wasn't nearly fast enough for how passive my enemy was playing, and that I was having a horrible time trying to whiff punish. They get to escape thanks to their internet. I feel like at least one part of the Ordovis vortex should have hit them there. That would have made a good clip, but that's okay, because we have a better clip coming up, because I take the time to switch to the greatsword, and watch this. See, I switched from a greatsword, the Ordovis greatsword, to the Knight's greatsword, and the change in attack pattern was all I needed, combined with a couple pivots, to almost full to nothing that poor host. Those 3 hits into the piercing fang afterwards was a mean combo. Because I've decided to put more faith on the character as well, I thought I should be playing with the Regal Beast Claw as well. I probably should have used the Siluria Spear, but that's a conversation for another time. And though I like the Beast Claw Hammer, I think I called it the Regal Beast Claw, which is its Ash of War technically, I'm not great with hammers. I need to practice putting hammers in the offhand or main hand when I have, you know, a weapon in the other hand, whichever the choice may be. I've seen people have some success with that. I think if I do play this character in this configuration again, that's what I ought to do, is put the Beast Claw Hammer in another hand and just not use it on its own. At least in duels. It felt pretty bad. I wanted to land the Ash of War so bad, it just didn't happen in the time frame that I gave myself for the video. It's fairly telegraphed, to be fair, and so if you get hit by it, it's entirely your fault. But that's just how the cookie crumbles. Regardless, this was still a fun build. I liked having so many options, and actually it was starting to border on the point where I felt like I had a few too many options, so I think it's time to downscale. Perhaps in a future video what I'll do is I will downscale the City Watch to somewhere around level 80 or 90. 80, 85, somewhere around there. I feel like that would be a fun bracket. I'd also get more people just enjoying their adventure as opposed to gank squads and, you know, people just waiting to be mean to little invader me, which they have every right to do, absolutely. But the level 80 bracket, it feels like you get people who are just honestly playing the game, and there's something fun about that. You got a little more of that, I feel like, in previous Souls titles, where people were just adventuring and not just waiting around with intent to PvP, you know. And maybe that's just me. That's just a personal preference, something I would like to give another go at. I think I have another build coming up here, though, that will be in that bracket anyway, so I don't necessarily need to change the City Watch. It'll be my Witch Hunter character, which I'm excited for. A sort of combat wizard, but not like a strength build with a little bit of intelligence, more like an intelligence build who's using the spells in the thick of it, as opposed to my war wizard, which was really just projectiles and armor. You're probably thinking to yourself, that's not too much of a delineation, and you're right. However, if I give the character a different name and a new outfit, it will feel different enough to me, and that's what counts. I had 2 invasions in this part of the Halig tree that just felt like all-out wars, where it felt so difficult to try to get anything in edgewise, attacks and damage opportunities. Yet you have a veritable army. The Halig tree is one of the more densely packed areas. You have a lot of backup to run into. Clear until you get to the second rotted tree avatar in the area. You have so many mobs to help you out, and I just was having a rough time about it. I feel like I need to do PvP more often. It's been a little bit since I did this one, so I was a smidge rusty, but that's no excuse when it comes to content, eh? As another little worthless aside, the Dexterity Sniper video broke 1,100 views at the time of this recording. That's an insane amount to me. And I understand people click through videos and they don't watch them all the way through. That's understandable and expected. I've always been a sort of stingy watcher of YouTube, where I usually don't click on a video unless I think I'm going to watch 90% or more of it. Most I'll do is click past sponsors or what have you. Like some sort of infidel or ingrate, not praising and adoring the content-giving gods of YouTube. But I digress. Very nice to see those views on the video. It's just a neat little thing. I don't expect this to ever turn into a full-time job, but I'm having fun. It's nice. It's nice to see a little recognition, I suppose, even in the smallest of degrees. I do want to take a moment and appreciate this duelist, though. Non-standard kit, great shield plus dagger. You couldn't get farther from the meta. I almost feel bad for striking first, but I couldn't help it. You know, when you're a copper for justice, you just get that bloodlust every once in a while. What am I saying? still, it's like an int strength build. I don't know what they were going for. Because you need some strength to wield the shield, and you need some int to make the dagger good. The glintstone Chris with its glintstone dart. I want to know what their build was configured for, honestly. Like, was that glintstone dart going to one-shot me? Is that even something you can feasibly do in the level 150 bracket that I made this character in? I really ought to downscale him. But the extra faith sure was nice. Though I did miss the 70 or so strength. It meant that my one-handed strength options were really tough. They hit real hard. It was nice. Though, in all honesty, if you're trying to replicate a build like this, if you're two-handing your weapons sincerely, 54 strength is enough. You can put those points elsewhere. I just like having more points for when I'm one-handing my weapons or what have you. Which happens a lot when you're doing a sword board, so if you're making a sword board dedicated build, there's a far more optimized way to do it. Me, I like utility, I like options, so my builds are always going to be a little less diverse. Or sorry, they're going to be a little more diverse, and as a consequence, less specialized. So, that is something to do. I wouldn't recommend that you rip any of these builds 100%. You're free to, of course. I put it all there if you'd like to. And these builds are, of course, inspired by just interactions with other players as well as YouTubers that I watch at the time. I'm not going to claim total intellectual property over any of these builds or their components. They are a summation of inspirations, which is actually a neat little topic, especially if you ever participate in writing or building stories. A lot of people get really overly concerned with being original, 100% original, and then there's the other crowd that's like, oh, you can't be original, every story's ever been... Any story that has been told has already been told is basically what they go to, which is a really sad way of looking at the world. It's very pessimistic, when in all reality it's like, okay, yeah, sure, I've seen Star Wars at least 2 if not 3 times in different mediums told by different people. Like, Star Wars was Star Wars, of course, and you know what, those Aragon books, those dragon books from a little while ago, they were also Star Wars in terms of the flow and the pattern and the archetypes, and they just follow so many story beats, right? But sometimes you want to hear Star Wars told by, I don't know, a Neil Gaiman, you know, somebody else, just to throw out a random name. It would be neat to see Star Wars told from somebody else's perspective and see what twist they put on a beloved story archetype. And here the host hits me with the Alt F4 true combo. I can't beat it, you can't beat it, none of us can do a darn thing about it. But back to the train of thought. Stories come in a sort of spectrum. I would liken it to a radio or an older TV trying to pick up a signal of a channel or a radio station, right? There's an acceptable range in which you get the story. The story is palatable to you. The rest is white noise, right? If we incorporated all the white noise, there's in this horrible analogy, there are far too many ways to go about storytelling for you to have the hubris to say every story that has been told can be told. Now, everyone putting their twist on it and blending concepts together, stealing for fun and profit, but adding enough of a twist to make it their own, being transformative in nature, I think is the key phrase. That is where true stories shine. And, you know, sometimes people like to be subverted because they see the same old, but in all honesty, variety is the best thing for the soul. Sometimes, after we've been subverted 10 times in a row, it's nice to get a story that pans out the way you expect it to. Especially if it has some neat concepts that you get to grab onto. A book, say, with a magic system that's really interesting, and it's nice to see the characters try to problem solve with it. Or a mystery novel where things are laid out and foreshadowed before they become relevant. I was reading Stormfront recently. Stormfront by Jim Butcher, I think his name is. I haven't read any of his books before. I don't know how many of them I'll read. I just pulled it up. Stormfront by Jim Butcher. And essentially it's about a character named Harry Dresden, who is, at the time of the book's writing, probably a modern-day wizard. Though it's funny seeing him reference old things like tubes of film for cameras as well as like payphones being used on the regular. It's kind of funny. A little anachronistic for what I should call modern day, but what have you. So Harry Dresden is a wizard in modern day Chicago or some such, and the book does a wonderful job of laying out concepts and upping the ante, and it foreshadows things before they are necessary. There's not a lot of wasted time. It's only like an 8-hour book in terms of the audio. I am listening to the audio, so I shouldn't say I'm reading it. But I do read plenty of books, don't worry. I don't just do audiobooks. I couldn't be one of those people. But it does such a wonderful job of conservation detail. Maybe I could make a Harry Dresden build, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot in this game that's like wizardry in the classic sense. Preparing spells and potions and conjuring and chanting. There's not a whole lot of that in this game that you can grab onto. Unfortunately, sorcery is how well you can pew-pew, and incantations or how well you can blow stuff up with fire or lightning. So, not a whole lot of parallels I could do there, not like Mr. Samuel Vimes here from Discworld. But still, there's a lot you can do in the realm of storytelling, even in your own lives and your own interactions. I love seeing people's characters and wondering if there's a story behind the name or the outfit. Like this guy here, his name's Crucible Simp. That's ridiculous. It's not lore accurate, but it's lore accurate adjacent. It puts a funny thought in your mind. He's simping for the era of the Crucible. He's a Faith Strength build like me, actually. We have a lot of the same weapons that we're swapping between, that we're using together. And he seems to be the main character of his little party there, and I also considered him the most competent of his little party when fighting him. He was the most willing to get in my face, he was the most willing to put me in my place, and they almost had me. A good handful of times. This was an all-out war. It took me a moment, unfortunately, to realize that Taker's Flames doesn't go upstairs properly. So that's something to keep in mind if you ever use the darn thing. Taker's Flames does not like stairs. It'll go up some of them, but it'll stop at the top stair. So always be aware. And I was just... This was an excellent situation. If I was to continue with Sword and Board, I would get absolutely maimed. I had to abuse this little wall just to buy some breath, some breathing room. Buy some breath. I don't know what I'm talking about. They had the Albinauric Archer with the Enchanted Arrows, or the Enchanted Shot Ash of War. An excellent choice, very hard to dodge. It's kind of neat, so they're probably some sort of dex build with a smidge of int. And then they had their guy in the back dressed like a cuckoo soldier using Dragon Breath, Arcane Faith. Don't know what's going on there. He also had, like, no health. I hit him earlier for, like, 400 something damage, and it was like 2/3 of his health, so I think he's about to bite the dust. So let's look at his health. Yeah, 596. That's so sad. The poor man never touched a vigor in his life, or if he did, he only touched it for, like, 5 or 6 points. It's not a whole lot. But that's how it works. Also, fighting with great swords on the stairs, don't use the heavy attack like I do. Oh, it's not even the heavy attack on that one. My overhead just missed entirely. And there we go. The nice heavy when he went for the Ash of War, because he got hit with the Ash of War. That was a fun little moment. It was an all-out war. I hope I was a good story for them. I hope I wasn't too much of a friendship breaker, a monopoly moment. But you never know what's going to go into people's minds. Now, here was a fun build, actually. I kind of want to recreate it in a sense, because I've always liked the idea of using the strength halberd that pokes, as well as a hatchet in the offhand. And this guy did a great job by mixing it with roars, so he has that super heavy that could trade with anything, out-trade anything just about. Halberds and roar builds were meant for each other. And to be fair, I did fairly well against this guy in this video. I had other clips that were really anticlimactic, and I didn't include them, but he killed me like 2 more times after this, so don't worry, I do lose. It wasn't a fun clip. He just hit me with the silly charge attack and the roar, and it would do like 1,300 damage. It was kind of insane. I probably should have included it. I feel bad for getting rid of those clips now that I'm talking about it, but maybe I'll do a better job of showing them off in the future, and maybe I'll use those as segues for making builds in the future. Always try to be inspired by what you see by other people in the field. That's also, I feel like, a hard part when you're consuming lots of Souls PvP media, is if you watch at least more than one YouTuber, they could have so many builds. They might have a different build every day, and it's hard to catch up, especially when it's not your full-time job. This is a hobby for me. Here I am abusing the twin lances, but if they kill the Erdtree avatar, I go home. So I need high damage output to keep that sucker alive. They're throwing fire at him. Who knows how much health he has? I doubt it's their first new game cycle, because it felt like the Erdtree avatar could take a little punishment. But I couldn't tell you how many new game cycles in they were. But they were actually adventuring in the world by the looks of it, and I came to interrupt, so that's kind of neat. I like seeing that. I like seeing the people who have obviously beaten the game once and are playing through it again with their buddies. Makes me kind of sad. Makes me kind of wish I had friends who would want to play the game. That's fine. Can't invade with other people feasibly, unfortunately, unless you get really lucky, so... And standing around the boil prawn shack waiting for invaders, though fun, doesn't have the long-lasting effect of fun for me as it does when I'm an invader who is the odd one out and at a disadvantage. The underdog is the term I'm looking for. Yeah, the Erdtree avatar is hitting him pretty good. Doesn't look like it's New Game Cycle 1. Or just New Game, not New Game Plus. I've always been bad at that. I always want to call the first cycle New Game Plus and the second cycle New Game Plus 2, but that's not correct in any sense of the term. This guy was a champ, though. He avoided me a good deal, and he got away from me a lot. I was very bad at following him. He kept getting away from me. His Phantom was backing him up. They had pretty good team play. I feel like they know each other, like they're chatting a little bit over Discord or some such. And it makes me wonder if the third one was a part of their group and wanting to be resummoned. Could be randoms, don't know. Maybe he's just aware. But you wonder. You want to peer into the minds of your foes just for a glimpse. But at the same time, the way online communities tend to be with these sorts of... any sort of game where you're pitting player against player that's not solely cooperative. Even in cooperative context, I suppose, you get individuals that are, well, I guess, I want to use the word toxic, but it feels like that word has been bludgeoned to death as to lose all meaning. But people can be very crude and crass and just unsightly. They're not generally jovial souls, unfortunately. Or rather, those who are probably jovial and happy people altogether are not the ones who are commenting or interacting with those fellows. The ones who are vocal are often the meanest, or so it would appear. Here's also another non-standard meta build. Gotta appreciate the guy using the handsome curved crescent axe. The crescent great axe, I think it's called. Oh, I love that thing's heavy. I should probably use it on a build, but I am bad with hammers and I am bad with axes. The only exception, it feels like, is if you're using two, but to be fair, jump attack builds are a little brain dead, so if I couldn't use those, I would be totally lost. And here's this poor guy, and I have so much defense thanks to that noble presence, whatever it's called, black flame protection, that we're trading each other, and because my straight sword is faster, I'm winning the trades. Even though he has a weapon that's many magnitudes larger than mine, and he probably would do good damage otherwise. I think he ate a crab or something when the fight started, so I'm also doing reduced damage to him, but the difference is a little stark. Nice fish and very well played. I'm only joking, I actually really like that hat and chest piece combo. The shield on the back looks a little silly, though. And here's a moment where I couldn't help myself. Sometimes this just evil, malign spirit of indignation overwhelms a PvPer, and he just pulls out Ashes of War, and he can't help it, right? And that's what happened to me during this exchange, is I was abusing Taker's Flames, and then I was like, alright, you know what? It's time to hit him with the good old Warhawk Axe, Stormhawk Axe. And then they never arrive. Watch this. It's the saddest thing. I have to speed up the footage. I speed it up like 300% or something, and I'm able to effectively buff and rebuff and get my mana back as they're just dealing with one room that has 3 enemies. I'm just bored out of my gourd waiting for them. I don't want to jump down farther, because I feel like I have a good chance if I can bottleneck them on this one little island of land, this cliff jutting out from the face there. And there we are, able to take out one phantom, nearly kill the other. I don't hop down immediately after him even though he's low, because I like to eat my phantoms before the main course of the host if I can. Makes better content. But the other guy didn't show up in a reasonable amount of time, so I was like, you know what, I'll just fight him and deal with the second guy when he shows up, when he bothers to. Another based crescent axe user. I feel gross using the terminology. It also doesn't feel evergreen. Like, that word's gonna fall out of style and I'm gonna look like a fool. I probably look foolish anyways. But that's besides the point. Now here's for the last two duels, and I'm proud of these two. I saved them for the end for you, noble, loyal, lovable viewer who decide to stick around this much. I may not be the best player, but I saved some pieces of candy for you at the very end for waiting through my diatribe. Honestly, you're a trooper. Or you have this on the second monitor, and your game is one of those games that's difficult to tab out of, and you're just subject to my whims. You must put up with my voice, simply because tabbing to the YouTube video to change what's going on is just too much effort. But here's a neat moment here, where I'm doing badly. This guy honestly deserved to win. He was a little more consistent of a player than I was. But there's something about the Hail Mary, the last second turnaround when all seems lost, where you make the good stumbling hit and then the parry and it's all over, folks. Those are the moments we're here for. Those are the moments that make you smile to yourself like a smug idiot, and you get that little endorphin rush. Even if you're not particularly skilled, I think it's good to throw in parries every once in a while. Though I felt parries were much more common back in Dark Souls 3, absolutely. Oh, I should practice more with parries. But the sword and board, it's a tough game. It is a tough way to play for tough people. People who main sword and board, or even just one-handed straight swords, they're incredible. They're the kind of people I would like to be more like in some sense. One day. One day. I mean, it's a hobby after all. Might as well get better at it and have some fun along the way. Challenge myself, stretch myself. It still amazes me that there's people out there who will go through the game and they will play one singular build, and that's it. That's all they want. Watch this. Stone of Grink. Stone of Grink. Oh, that's fun. Stone of Grink can combo into itself. It probably combos better if you have high casting speed. I don't have high casting speed, so I'm sure he could have rolled out had he not stood his ground. But here's the build, in case you were curious. You should probably mix up the physic and make sure it has the bubble tier for health regen, and then the other mixing could be the one where you get a damage buff on repeated hits or something. Something better. Heck, even the 10 strength one would probably be better at this point, given that I like to one-hand weapons. So there you go. Here is quickly on screen all of the weapons. For anyone dissecting the build, you can pause at any given moment if you absolutely have to know what the Ash of War is attached to some weapon. And I appreciate you for sticking around this long. It's been a good ride, and I hope to make more content in the future. Content that will make you smile, make you glad to hang around. Content that maybe inspires you to make your own build. Thank you for joining me again, and I hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.